Chris here from Tiger Spreadsheet Solutions. Merry Christmas and welcome to this Excel VBA tutorial video. Now, we're going to try to build an advent calendar in Excel, which might sound like a bit of a crazy idea. Our advent calendar is not going to dispense chocolate. Our advent calendar is going to dispense some lyrics. So what on earth does that mean? What does it look like? Let's get into it. Well, you can find the files for download on the website. The link is below this video. Download the files, work along with me. So this is our Excel based advent calendar, and just in kind of simple mode, if we change this to single, then we can, let's switch the validation off too. We can click on any of these shapes and we can see a song lyric appearing. Now, where are those song lyrics come from? Well, this is from an iconic song, certainly here in the UK, by a group called E17, a Christmas song called Stay Another Day. Now, the lyrics are stored in the spreadsheet on the second sheet in the file that's called Lyric Store. You can see the lyrics here. So what we're trying to do is, if the user presses the sixth shape, day 6, then it's going to flash up the right lyric, the lyric here from day 6. So that's the first thing we want to do. That's the basic functionality. Second, we want some multi-line functionality. I'm going to change the mode here. And now when we click on one of the shapes, we can see not just the lyric from this day, but all the lyrics from the previous days being flashed up as well. Pretty cool. So for example, if I click on day 10, you can see I'm getting all the lyrics flashing up there. Pretty cool, I think. This is our Excel-based advent calendar. We've also got this validation mode. So if I set this to yes, then we can see, well, the day of filming, I'll just show you quickly, but the day of filming, if you look in the bottom left corner down here, is the 7th of December. Now, I've put validation on. So if I now click on day 10, I'm going to get this message that says too early. So we've got a validation control in there that stops people clicking on the day if it's too early, if we haven't yet got to that day. We can see it's 7th of December, so day 7 is fine coming up. Day 8, we get this validation control kicking in, telling us that it's too early. So they're the basic functions for our Excel-based advent calendar. Over the course of the next hour, we're going to look at how to build this using Excel VBA. Hopefully we'll get to all the functions. If we don't, I'll leave those with you for your Christmas homework. You can work on those yourself. So let's get started. I'm going to close the completed file. I've got just the starter file here. So as I said, these are available on the website. Download link below this video. You can work along with me. So again, VBA, what I say in all these lectures is we've got to be clear first, conceptually, speaking in English or your own native language, what we're trying to do. It's got to be clear in our own minds conceptually what we're trying to do before we try to get into code. Otherwise the coding is going to be very confusing. So let's try to think step by step about this. First job is to create these shapes. Now clearly I could just hold down the control key, create the shape manually, but that's not fun for us, particularly as programmers. We know that VBA can do this for us at the click of a button. Our particular shape, yeah, I've formatted this shape before the video. You can choose any shape you want for this. You go to Insert, you'll find shapes under illustrations these days in Excel. You've got shapes here, lots of choice here, and by all means play with the formatting, because the formatting, this shape's going to be copied, so the formatting and settings will be taken across to the other shapes too. First things first, I'm going to change the name of this shape from day 1 to ref shape. We'll see one of the critical mechanisms in this file is the names of the shapes. The names of the shapes control that mechanism that points us to the right line in the sum. We'll see what we mean later on. So I'm going to change the name, and we've got ref shape here. Okay, seems to have another shape in the file. Just going to delete that. Now I want to check what shapes I've got in this file because I was practicing with it. Going to go to the whole desktop view. How do you check what shapes are on a sheet? Definitively, go to the page layout and then selection pane. It will tell you exactly what page shapes are on the sheets. If you've hidden a shape, if you control the visibility, then you might not be able to see the shape. So this is a good way just to be sure that there's no other shapes on the sheet. So we're ready to get started now. And the name of our shape, yep, let's call it ref shape here. Hit enter. Okay, we've got a shape called ref shape. I'm going to click the view back to something a little bit more user friendly. So we want to create 25 versions of this shape. Right, It's going to be a job for Visual Basic. Let's get the Visual Basic editor open. I've got a brand new module here that's clean, well, nothing in it. And first job for us, in any module, at the top, option explicit. This means that Excel is going to check the spelling of the variable names before it runs the code. It's going to pick up a lot of those silly little spelling errors that often creep in. So we need a new macro. Let's have an informative name. Let's call it create 25 shapes. And then we've got the end sub too. So we've got our macro here. Now we've got to think about exactly how it's going to work. Well, we could, what should you do? If you don't know what coding techniques to use, what should you do? Well, you could record some code. Use the macro recorder. That would be quite a good move here. Use the macro recorder, review the code, try to get it working for us. But I know if we say active sheet.shapes, and then the name of the shape, and here you can see why it was useful to name the shape because it's in my head. Now I can quickly recall it. If we just say active sheet shapes ref shape.copy and then active sheet.paste, this is going to create an additional shape, and hopefully we'll be able to see that shape just beside the VBA editor there. So I'm going to run the routine now, Control S, save the file first. F5 key on the PC to run the routine. Of course, I haven't quite spelled things properly, so Excel's trying to help me out there. Spelling is correct now. F5 key, run the code. We can see our second shape appearing there. So that in itself is a good start, and I just love executing VBA code, seeing things happen instantaneously like that. It yeah, really gets me excited about coding. Hope you're getting excited too. Now at this stage, I can see that deleting shapes is something we're going to want to do. We're creating shapes. We don't want to be wasting a lot of time manually deleting those shapes. So let's get ahead of the game here. Let's create a macro to delete all the shapes apart from our ref shape, the shape that we want to retain to use in future routines. So how would you delete shapes using Excel VBA? And again, let's think conceptually. Well, we could maybe look at the names of the shapes and try to kind of manipulate it in that way. The easiest way to do it is to use one of Excel's collections. So Excel, when it indexes, when it loads up, it looks through collections of objects, and objects have properties attached to them. So just three basic concepts for understanding VBA: collections, objects, and properties. Collections consist of objects, and objects have properties attached to them. So a really useful collection is the shapes collection, the shapes on the sheet. So we don't have to kind of reference the shapes using some difficult technique. We can just say to Excel, listen, all the shapes on the sheet, can you do something to all of them? We could be talking about the worksheets in the workbook. All of the worksheets in the workbook, can you do something? And any number of other collections. How do we harness a collection? Well, we do need a variable, and I'm going to say Chris shape as shape. I think that's the correct variable and type, but we will see. And then we say to Excel, for each Chris shape, so the variable name, we can say active sheet.shapes. I'm going to assume that I'm going to stay on this sheet when I'm running the macro. Then we say next Chris shape. So we've opened and closed the loop there, just checking the spelling. Okay, so we've got our loop there, looping through a collection. Let's do a quick test to see if it's working. I'm just going to say Chris shape.name up in a message box. What am I expecting to happen? Expecting two message boxes to flash up with the name. So we've got ref shape and the other shape, and this is going to lead us to a problem that we're going to encounter. The other shape is also called ref shape at the moment. So that's something for us to think about. We want to change the names of the shapes as we go through. How are we going to do that? Right, and in this case, we want to loop through the shapes. Remember, we're deleting the shapes here. So we're just going to say Chris shape.delete, but then we've got to remember that if the name of the shape is ref shape, that's the one shape we want to retain. If Chris shape.name does not equal and it's ref shape, then chrisshape.delete. So right now, well, both of the shapes are called ref shape because we duplicated that name. So if I run this code now, then I don't think anything's going to happen. Yeah, we're just going to keep our shapes there, but just change the name of this shape. Just call it other shape quickly, and then run the code. Hopefully that shape is going to disappear. There we can see that the shape disappeared. I just ran the code using the F5 key. You could hit the play button at the top of the VBA editor here. So this can be super useful for us. We've got a routine here just to quickly delete the shapes. That's going to help us efficiently get through this task. Just going to indent this loop here for completeness. Okay, so we can create another shape and we can delete the shape. So we've got to start thinking about things like the name of the shape, the properties of the shape. We just talked briefly about some foundational concepts for understanding VBA, collections of objects and properties. We're going to harness different properties of this shape to get this job done. So properties are just things about the object, things about this shape. So it's got color properties, it's got the text inside the middle of the shape. What properties are we particularly interested in? Well, we're going to use the shape name. We're going to use the shape name to control some of the process. So we're interested in the name. Also interested in positioning. We want to position these shapes in that nice 5x5 grid that you'd associate with an advent calendar. So we're going to look at the dot top and the dot left properties, which allow us to control position. So there's some properties there for us to get started with. But firstly, let's just try to create 25 shapes. So how might we do that? Well, hopefully you're thinking, well, that sounds like a repeated instruction. So conceptually, I know we're going to need a loop. So I'm going to go back to our create 25 shapes macro here. And I'm going to, if we're using a loop, then usually we need a variable, and the counter variable name always features in my videos because it's an informative variable name, just like with routines. Good to have informative variable names. That helps us understand the role of the variable. Then we can say for counter equals 1 to, how far are we going? 25. I mean, usually it's not good practice to hard code values into code because they're difficult to change, difficult for the user to manipulate. In this case, we're talking about the days leading up to Christmas. That's going to be 25 days. So we don't have to worry too much there about those hard-coded values. So we've got our loop there, and we've got some lines of code inside the loop. These lines of code are copy pasting the shapes. Now this copy method, I'm going to put outside of the loop because I know that if Excel copies a shape once, it can paste it any number of times. It doesn't have to repeat that copy line of code. So I'm going to position that outside of the loop. Now let's just step through this code and let's see what happens. Control S to save the file, F8 key to step through the code, or you could use debug and step into. I'm going to use the F8 key, step through the code. So I'm expecting another shape to appear. Okay, where are these shapes going? So they don't appear to be appearing. Okay, so can you work out what's happening here? Bit of a schoolboy error for me there, I think. What's happening here? Well, I'm guessing, yeah, the shapes are layering on top of each other here. So, yeah, as I said, a bit of a schoolboy error for me because let's just quickly change the view so you can see that. Let's just come across to the right. There we go. You can see it now. And yeah, we can see the shapes are very simply layering on top of each other like that. So we're producing new shapes, but because they're just layering on top of each other, we can't see that. So we can't see that there's different shapes on the screen. So how are we going to start thinking about positioning, thinking about getting this working? Well, we're going to harness the dot top property, and let's just try to understand how that works first. So let's have a quick routine here, and let's have message box shapes, and let's have ref shape again, shape dot top, and I think I'm going to have to specify that I'm talking about the active sheet here. Okay, I just want to demonstrate what we mean by this top property. I'm going to delete the other shapes quickly. Alt-H-FDO on Windows, Alt-H-FDO, or you can go to Home, I think, Home, Select. I'll just show you this quickly, whole desktop. If you go to Home, and then over on the right hand side, here we go, find and select, and then select objects. That allows you to quickly draw a shape around some objects that you want to select. Alt-H-FDO on the Windows PC if you're interested in the shortcut there. Let's go back to the demo view. Okay, so let's see what happens when we run this code. We've got this .top property here, F8 key to run the code, F5 key to run the code. We've got 19.35, so we've got a number popping up here. So let's try to understand what's going on just by repositioning this shape. Now what do you think is going to happen to that number? Do you think it's going to get higher or lower or stay the same? Now we can see it's 92.85. So this number is referring to the position of this shape. Now that's intriguing to us as programmers trying to do this task. If we can control this property, we can control the positioning of the shape. So that's exciting to us. So let's see if we can copy paste the shape and then control the position of the next shape. Now if I put selection in here, I know that if a shape is copy pasted, it becomes the active object, it becomes the selection. So I can say selection.top here, and then let's just say 100 for now. At the same time, yeah, let's just run this code quickly. So what's going to happen? We're expecting a shape to appear, and it's going to appear below the shape that we've created, below our reference shape, because the top property of our reference shape was about 20, something like that. So we've created a shape and we've adjusted the property to do something to the shape. So we managed to move it around. So there's good progress here. Another property we want to think about at this point is the name property of the shape. We want to control the name property because it means we'll be able to delete the shapes quickly. At the moment, all the shapes have the same names. Let's think about controlling the name property so that we can get the task done and quickly delete these shapes too. Okay, so let's say selection.name. This will allow us to define or to control the name property. So selection.name, and what's going to be an appropriate name for the shape? Well, we talk about informative routines, talk about informative variable names. It will be great to have informative names for the shapes too. So, but it's worth thinking, how would we do that? You know, what could we harness in our routine already that would help create an informative name for the shape? Remember, we've got one shape for each day, 1 to 25. So this counter variable is incrementing up by 1 every time we go through the loop. The counter variable here. It's incrementing up by 1 every time we go through the loop. If you use the F8 key, you could prove that to yourself. So let's harness this and let's just concatenate it with some text. And then, yeah, it's a very common construct in dynamic VBA routines. You've got some text here concatenated using the ampersand, using the and sign concatenated with a variable. That means that the variable is going to increase every time we go through the loop. So we're going to have this effect of day 1, day 2, day 3, day 4, day 5. Okay, so I'm going to run the whole routine here, just hitting the F5 key. Okay, again, didn't look like much happened, but all of these shapes are stacked up here. So if I just move these around, I can see these shapes are stacked up here. How else could we prove this? Well, remember that selection pane we talked about right at the beginning. If we go to page layout and selection pane, I can see, just on the right here, I can see all of the shapes listed down here. And indeed, the names are what we would expect, day 1 to day 25. So now we're thinking, oh, I don't want to have to delete all of these shapes manually, but it's okay because, of course, we've got our routine here. Just bring the VBA editor up a little bit. Got our routine here to delete the shapes. So I'm going to test out this routine now. Routine to delete the shapes, hit the F5 key. We can see most of the shapes have gone, apart from our duplicated ref shape, which has the name ref shape, so it's not going to be deleted. Okay, so now we should be good to go. Going to test this by running the routine. Going to have a load of shapes now, running the routine again. All of those shapes are gone. You know, if I move this shape, I can see there's no other shapes hiding underneath it. Okay, so we've got some basics there. we're generating some shapes. That's a good start, beginning to control the properties of the shapes, and we've got a macro to delete the shapes quickly. So we're making some progress here. I'm just going to take a sip of water. So what's next? Well, we need to think about positioning these shapes more precisely. We want to create this 5 by 5 grid, and how might we do that? Well, let's first, if you've got a difficult task to do, and this 5 by 5 grid, is quite intricate, so we're just going to give up on it. Oh, I don't quite know how to do that. You've got to try to do something easier. So simplify the task, do something easier, but which is similar, or which is kind of an intermediary step, and then that's going to get you closer to achieving the task that you want to do. So let's just try to position all of the shapes in a single line. All of the shapes in a single line. How might we do that? Well, again, the dot top property is going to be important. And in order to do this, I'm going to use a variable, just a place to store some information. I'm going to say top val as integer. And then I'm going to use this variable in the just here, selection.top equals top val, okay? And we're going to initiate top val variable name, there we go. We're going to initiate this variable to begin with, so top val equals, let's start with 100, and then every time we go through the loop we're going to increment up the value of this variable by let's say about 40 here. Okay, good. So going to step through the loop here. See, we've got our new variable initialized here. Just by hovering the cursor over the variable you can see the value. Very useful for debugging. F8 key, okay, we've got a new shape. We can't see it yet because it hasn't been repositioned, but we should see it now. Okay, we didn't see it then. Let's go back through this. Maybe it's because, okay, yeah, we can see the shape's actually been created over here. Now you can't quite see this in your screenshot, but I'm just going to keep stepping through the code using the F8 key, and we can see we're gradually getting shapes building up there. Okay, so we've managed to control the vertical position. We need to think about controlling the horizontal position. So now's a good time to introduce the dot left property, which is going to help us with that positioning. I've got another shape here called ref shape. Okay, let's get rid of you. I think that's because I didn't work through the whole routine. Not too concerned about that. So we've got the dot top property. Let's think about the dot right, dot left property as well. So that allows us to control the horizontal position. And we just say selection.left, and let's just fix it as a static value for now. We can always come back to it later. Let's have a sensible value of about 50 here. Okay, so we've set the horizontal position, set the vertical position. The vertical position is incrementing up by 40. This is the critical line of code. The vertical position is incrementing up by 40 every time we go through the loop. That's going to have the effect of kind of stacking up the shapes in a single column. Hopefully, Control S, save the file, F5 key to run the code. Okay, we can see we've got all of our shapes here. There we go. Okay, looking good. So another thing we've got to think about is we've got to think about the caption, the shape caption, but we'll come to that in a second. Let's try to master this positioning first. Let's see if we make some progress and make this a proper 5 by 5 grid. Now this does involve, well, the method I'm proposing, you might want to stop the video now and think how you might do this. The method I'm proposing involves a mechanism that tells us if the value of counter is a multiple of 5. If we could say to Excel, listen, if the value of counter is a multiple of 5, I want you to move down to the next row. That's what we want to say to Excel. How might we do that? Do you know the tool? Do you know the technique in VBA that might help us do that? Well, we can say, let's put it down here. Yeah, if counter mod 5 equals 0, then. So this line of code is saying if counter mod 5. So this mod command, this mod piece of code here, will tell us what is the remainder when this number is divided by that number. What's the remainder? When this number is divided by that number. So when counter is 5 divided by 5, that means there's a remainder of 0. When counter is 10 divided by 5, that means 10 divided by 5 will give us a remainder of 2. So I'm not sure if I'm explaining this correctly. Let's see if this is going to work for us. 10 mod 5 give us yeah, it's not quite, I'm not sure if I'm explaining this correctly in terms of remainders and stuff, but let's just use a message box to flash this up. Yep. Okay. Yep. No, I think I'm getting my head around this now. Okay, so let's keep going. So if counter mod 5 equals 0, then we're going to increment the top val variable. And you know, maybe I should just demonstrate this and then try to kind of retrospectively explain what's going on. Okay, and at the same time, let's do something with the with the left variable as well, the left property rather. Let's say left val here, a new variable, and we're going to use this variable to control the left value here, the left property rather. So selection.left equals left val, and at the moment with this left property, we're just going to increment it up every time we go through the loop by saying left val equals left val left left val plus 20, let's say. Okay, so we've got some control over the top val, over the top property and the left property. So we're beginning to move to a situation where we can create this grid. Okay, so what's going to happen now? I'm going to step through the code using the F8 key. We've got our shape, and our shape is in a reasonable position. Okay, we've got another shape, You can see I need to make this up. I've just said +2. We can see the problem here. Let's change that to 30. And then I'm going to delete the shapes, replay the code. There's our shape. Okay, there's shape 2. This is better. Shape 3, shape 4, shape 5. Now you can see, because we've got a multiple of 5, and I think I've worked this out in my own head now. We've got a multiple of 5. That means the remainder is 0, just like 10, 15 multiples of 5. Then it's going to increment the top val variable up. So what are we expecting to happen now? The top val variable has incremented up, so our shapes now are positioned further down. Okay, so we've got the effect of moving the shapes down. As you can see, we've now got to think about the horizontal control. How are we going to control this horizontal position? Well, it's a slightly different logic here, because these shapes, well, the first one is we want to be 0, then 20, 40, 60, 80, 100. Then we want to reset it back to 0 for the next row, go through it, reset it back to 0 for the next row and go through it. So we've already got a mechanism here that does something every time we have a multiple of 5. So let's harness that, and let's say left val. I'm going to have a base value of about, let's try 80 as a base value. Okay. Now, if we don't have a multiple of 5, then I just want left val to increment up. Okay. I don't want to explain this line by line. It's going to just get too complicated. Oh, it's going to take too much time. So you're going to have to play through the code. You'll see it, and hopefully you'll be able to understand it once we demonstrate it here. So let's delete the shapes. Okay, okay, because we didn't finish the routine. Yeah, I've got a shape here. I've got to delete manually. Okay, let's step through the code then. Paste in the shape. Okay, I'm going to initiate the left val variable at the top so that first shape is positioned further into the spreadsheet. Let's say left val equals 80 here. Okay, so that means when we begin the routine, or the first time we go through the loop, the left to right positioning should be accurate. Okay, working through the loop here. That looks like a reasonable starting point. Okay, going through the code. So now we get into our fifth shape. So we've gone into our conditional statement. I'm just going to switch myself over to the other side. Gone into the conditional statement now. So we're reconfiguring, resetting our position variables here. So what's going to happen now? Well, we're hoping to come out on the new line. Yet we've come out on a new line there, but we've come out a little bit across. Okay. What's happening here? Okay, we've moved across a little more than I thought. Okay, yeah, I can see the problem here. So maybe if we reconfigure this, yeah, I think these two lines of code, I think we need to have after this conditional statement. I'm not absolutely sure. Okay, let's give this a go anyway. We might have to play with this to get it working. So let's delete the shapes again, just outside of your screenshot. Just going to delete the shapes down here, play the code. Okay, and delete the shape manually. Okay, let's see how we're doing. Just going to play the code now. Right, okay. So I've got this kind of configuration here that I'm going to show you. So not quite what I'm looking for here, but I know we're close. I can feel we're close. And I also know by stepping through the code, I'm going to be able to understand exactly what's going on here. Okay, so I'm just going to step through the code, pasting the shape in, okay, and positioning the shape. That looks reasonable. I'm pasting the shape in, I'm positioning the shape. That looks reasonable. Pasting the shape in, I'm positioning the shape. Okay, so we're at the fifth shape now. Okay, so we're reconfiguring the position values there. Now where does the shape go? Okay, so maybe it is better to have these lines of code. Let's reconfigure this. I think I was actually closer first time. Let's put these lines of code down at the bottom here. Let's see where this gets us. Okay, it's going to save the file, delete the shapes, and then stepping through the code again. Using the F8 key, stepping through. Okay, day 1, day 2, 3, day 4, day 5. Okay, in day 5 we've gone into this conditional statement now. So the top value has increased, the left value has been reset, if you like, back to our original value. And then, okay, and that looks fine. That looks fine. That looks fine. Okay, what happens when we get to the end of the row? Okay, and there it is. So that looks okay to me. Not absolutely sure why that didn't work before. Let's just run the routine here. Okay, now this looks reasonable. We've got our 5 by 5 grid. I was a bit worried there that this wasn't going to work, but you can see, I think it's important to leave when I get confused, it's important, which happens quite a lot, by the way, it's important to keep those online because you can see how I work through the problems, and I haven't got any magic dust or anything. When it goes wrong, I just work through the code, try to understand the values of the variables by hovering over them, using the mouse. These are the tools I use, the techniques I use to debug things. But we've got our 5 by 5 grid. So this is looking good. So with a bit of tweaking here, I'm going to delete the shapes. I can see I want to increase the distances between the shapes here. Maybe just make the shape a little bit smaller because we're not working with much space here. I'm going to make our reference shape smaller. Remember, our reference shape is copied when we create the other shapes. So this means, what does this look like now? Okay, we're getting there. I want to move the shapes up a bit. So I'm going to initiate top val at 50 rather than 100. Okay, delete the shapes again. Okay, how's this looking? Yeah, I want to introduce a bit more space between the shapes and maybe move them over left a little bit more. So let's start with 40 here. Move our reference shape up to the top so we don't get confused here. Just going to use the cursors there to move it. Okay, and let's delete the shapes. Tell you what, rather than deleting the shapes every time, why don't we just call a routine at the beginning of the macro that we're using all the time. Call delete shapes. So the first thing this routine is going to do is going to delete, go to the delete shape macros and the delete shape macro, which is just down here, and delete the shapes for us. Okay, there we go. So we've got this value here where we kind of reinitialize. Got to set that as well and play. Okay, getting closer. FL 40 that should be. Okay, getting closer. Good. So we want to introduce a bit more spacing between the shapes. So let's increase this increment here. Let's try 60. Play the code. Okay, good. Certainly getting there. I want to move over a little bit more. Reinitialize these values. Okay, and then let's try to spread them out vertically a little bit more. So we're looking at the top value then. Top value, let's have 60 here, and then we could be close. Could be close, there we go. Whoa. Okay, that wasn't what I expected. Top value equals 50. That's because I put 460. Okay, there we go. Play the code again. Okay, good. And yeah, I'm happy with that for now. So obviously you can tweak this, and you can see how easy it is to tweak. Just changing the values in the VBA editor. You can tweak it to get it doing exactly what you need to do. I have seen one thing that we've got to change at this stage, which is, how do we change the text in the macro? We want to change the text in the macro here. Now this is an instruction I don't know off the top of my head. So what are we going to do? Well, you can go online and Google it. I'm just going to record the routine. Going to record the routine, see if we can make sense of it that way. So let's say change caption, meaningful variable name. Okay, and then I'm going to just edit the text here. And let's say day 2. Okay, there we go. And then stop the macro recorder. And then back into Visual Basic. We'll have another module here, because usually when you do some recorded code, you're going to have another module. And we can see, okay, this line of code at the top here. I'm going to take this line of code. It's going to take some tweaking. I'm not absolutely sure if it's going to work. But where we're adjusting the properties, let's try this. I think it's text frame. What we're going to need is text frame.characters.text. Text frame.characters.text. Okay, let's just quickly see if that works. If not, we're going to have to go on Google and see if we can sort it out. Okay, that's not quite there. Selection.text. Okay, text frame.characters. Let's try selection.characters.text quickly. Okay, just hitting play now. Okay, selection.characters.text seems to do the job. So you can see there, don't know some code, recording the code, tweaking it. You know, I had an idea in my mind what the code should have been, so I was able to call on some pre-existing knowledge. Of course, you just go onto Google, credible website, and get that information. Okay, but we don't want all of these captions to be day 2. We want these captions to be whichever day these shapes refer to. So we're going to repeat the line of code we used previously for naming the shapes. Hit the F5 key. Okay, and this looks good. So all of our shapes here have captions. So that's pretty nice. Just one thing I want to do at this point, is irritating me a bit that ref shape is visible. So I'm going to make it visible at the beginning of the routine using the visible property of the shape. .visible equals true, and that means that Excel should be able to copy it. Then at the end of the routine, I'm just going to set it to false again. Down at the bottom here, you just see that in your screenshot. In fact, I'm just going to whiz over to the other side of the screen. And then we're going to reset the visible property here to false. And that means that this ref shape at the top, which is kind of annoying me, you know, we don't need that shape there. That shape should disappear when we run this code, and we can see that the shape is not there anymore. Okay, good. So I'm pretty happy with that. So we've got our 25 days of the Advent calendar there. It's not doing anything exciting yet though. If we just click on these shapes, then, well, it's not doing anything at the moment. Well, nothing useful anyway. So we need to assign macros to these shapes, and we need to make sure that these macros do something meaningful. Well, firstly, how might we assign a macro? Are we going to click through all of the shapes individually and go to assign macro? That's not ideal. Where could we assign this macro more dynamically or programmatically, we could say? Well, let's say the macro is going to be click on shape, let's say. This is the name of the macro. Good, and then let's have message box. I'm just going to say application.caller. We'll get into this application.caller concept in a second. So how do you assign a macro to an object? In this case, a shape. It could be a button. How do you do that programmatically? Well, this line of code, selection.onAction. On action. Action equals, and then the name of the routine, which is click on shape at the top there. Okay, you can see click on shape, just outside your screenshot, apologies. Click on shape is at the top of the routine here. So click on shape is the name of a macro. So this line of code is saying to the selection, in this case is a shape, to the selection assign this macro, which is click on shape. So if I run this again, this routine, and then click on the shape, what's going to happen now? You might want to guess, stop the video and guess yourself what's going to happen. Well, we can see that we've got a little message box flashing up that says day 1, and this is going to nicely segue onto the next portion of the video. Day 4, what happens if I click on day 10? Get a little message box flashing up saying day 10. Now this is the power of application.caller, super powerful little piece of VBA code. So application.caller is the name of the object that called the macro. The name of the object that called the macro. In our case, is going to be the name of the shape, because we're working with shapes. Why is this so interesting for us? Well, if we use the name of the shape, they've all got numbers, day 1, day 2, day 3.4. We can then harness that information, extract it from the name of the shape, harness that information to do the positioning we have to do in the lyrics to make the right lyric display. So conceptually, that's what we're looking to do. You might want to stop the video and think, okay, I understand the concept a bit. Let's see if I can make that happen. So when we click on the shape, we want to get this piece of information, this number. Okay, so different ways to do this. Let's look at one possibility. So we're now on this click shape macro. I'm gonna use a variable to store this information. Let's say day number, informative variable name. Then we're going to say day number equals application. Let's use the write function in VBA. Write application.caller1. And you'll see this is going to work in some cases, it's not going to work in others. And they're going to put a breakpoint in here. Now, if you're using application.caller, stepping through the code doesn't always work, because VBA has to have the macro called by an object in order to have for this application.caller line of code to work. So rather than using the FAK, I'm going to use another great debugging technique, which is using a breakpoint here. So when Excel gets to this line of code, Excel's going to stop. So the breakpoint's in. I just clicked in the margin, left clicked in the margin to put the breakpoint in, and then the code has run and stopped here. So day number is 3. Okay, I can see it's put 3 in speech marks there, which indicates it's a text string. Not ideal. So let's say val, another VBA function there, so that's going to convert it to a value for us. Again, hit day 3, and we can see that day number is now an integer, now a number. That might avoid problems later on. So this is going to work day 9, for example. Hang on a second, day 9, there we go. So we've got 9 there. What about day 10? What's going to happen in day 10? So day 10, just click day 10. and I've got to stop, reset this code properly, just click day 10, and day number is now 0. Now what's happening there? Well, our commands, our function here is taking the last character and converting it to a value. Now, that's not going to work from 10 or more. We actually want to take the last 2 characters. So how are we going to manage this? Well, let's put a conditional statement in, because we want Excel to do one thing if something's happening, another thing if this thing is not happening. And then we can use the len function here. So if len application.caller equals, so day, D-E-A, D-A-Y is 3 space and then the number, so that will be 5. Then we want day val to calculate like this. If not, then we want day no, the variable, to calculate a different way, and in this case we want the last 2 characters here. I'm going to change this message box now, not application caller. I'm going to change this message box to display the value of the variable we're configuring here with these lines of code. So Control S to save the file, and then I'm just going to click on a shape, and we can see I haven't quite got the syntax correct here, so end if, there we go, and then just click on the shape. Okay, we've got 5 there, that's perfect. Now we acknowledge that days with 2 digits at the end are going to be more difficult. So there we go, we've got 13. Then let's just try 25 here, and we got 25. Okay, so we've managed to extract this critical piece of information, which is the day number. That's important because looking at the lyrics, if we know the number of the day, then we can use that for position control. So we can offset down this list in order to get the right lyric displaying. So this number thing is critical for us. You might want to stop the video now. How might you do that? Get down the list and get the right lyric displaying there. Let's try to do that. Let's get straight into it here. So it should be fairly straightforward. Let's go for another variable here to store some information. Let's call it lyric store, because it's going to be storing lyrics for us, quite literally. And then lyric store, what's it going to equal? Well, let's think conceptually first. If we go to our lyric store sheet, then it's going to be the day number, that number of rows away from this cell here. So day 1 is going to be 1 row away. Day 9 is going to be 9 rows away. So we want to get the number of rows down that corresponds to the day no variable we've got here. How are we going to do this? Well, it's a popular technique on the Tiger channel. Anything to do with position control. Here we're talking about controlling position on the spreadsheet. Anything to do with position control usually means offset. Okay, so we want to store this information in the lyric store variable that we just created. A common mistake I make in the videos is I forget to properly define the variables. We want an integer variable there because the day number is a whole number, and we want a string variable here because it's storing text. So lyric store equals, and this is the second sheet, so sheets 2 dot range, let's D2 is at the top there, so D2 dot offset, and here is where the day number variable is so useful for us. So something like this should get the job done. Okay, and then the message box I'm now going to change to lyric store. Okay, there we go. So offset, remember offset method, so we have an object, usually a range, specify the range, that's an anchor point. Offset moves us away. Offset means move away from. Offset moves us away this number of rows and this number of columns. So we're going to go, if it's day 1, we're going to go 1 row down, 0 columns across. That's exactly what we want to happen. So let's click on day 2. Then it should say, don't think I can take the pain. On day 2 here, just going to click on day 2. It does say, don't think I can take the pain. Day 4, oh, don't leave me alone like this. And there it is. Okay, so we've got the basic functionality there. One thing that does get on my nerves is this message box here. We have this Microsoft Excel text popping up here. Now, Now, I'm not one of these person who hates Microsoft, obviously, but we could have something more informative for the user here. If you put 0, comma, 0, comma, and then put something else, another piece of information that's going to be helpful for the user. So what about the day number? Day concatenate, a technique we've already seen. Text string concatenated to a variable. Let's have another word at the end there. Okay, let's see how that shows up in the message box. See the message box here. Okay, now this is now informative. This is all value here. Doesn't say Microsoft Excel anywhere. There's no kind of pointless information. Day 9 lyric, thought I heard you say you love me. Cool. So we've got that additional function. So again, you might want to stop the video here. Remember, we have multiple functions, and I'm going to plow on, see if we can get to the full functionality here. What was the next function we were looking to build in? Well, rather than having just a single lyric here, it would be nice to have multiple lyrics displaying here. Not just that, we also wanted to have an option to change the mode here, to change the mode from single to multi. Well, if we're changing modes, then it would be nice to have a drop-down menu. So on our supporting sheet here, the lyric store sheet, I'm going to create a drop-down menu here. So single and multi are the values I want to appear in the drop-down menu. Rather, I'm not creating the drop-down menu here. Here I'm listing the values that will appear in the drop-down menu. So single, multi, yes and no, I know we're going to need later when we do our validation control. So single, multi, so let's have mode, and then in here, Alt-A-VV on the Windows PC, list, then let's go to our values, click in the source box, go to the values we've just created. These are the lists that are going to appear in the drop-down menu now. Okay, let me switch to a view. It's a bit easier to see for you. There we go. Right, so in this cell, we can now see we've got our drop-down menu. Let's just make this look half decent. Alt-HAC, central is central justification. F4 key to repeat the last action. Alt-HBA gives us all borders. Alt-HBA, these are all on the Windows PC. And then let's just have a little bit of shading here. Okay, and then at this point, why don't we switch the grid lines off for presentational purposes? Grid lines are off. That tends to give things, you know, a much cleaner feel. That's maybe I'm thinking about repositioning this now. I'm going to Control X. I'm going to put this towards the top of the spreadsheet. Just personally, aesthetically, in terms of appearance, I thought that looks better. So we've got single, multi here. So we want the user to be able to set single. Well, we're currently in single mode. If it's single mode, then we have a single line. If we're set to multi, then we want multiple lines to appear. All of the lines from the previous days, you can see in the completed file exactly what I mean. So what are we going to do? Well, again, we want Excel to do one thing if one thing's happening, and to do another thing if a different thing is happening. So we're going to need a conditional statements. And what piece of information is important for the conditional statements? Well, the piece of information that specifies what we're going to do, controls rather what we're going to do, is the value of this cell here. Okay, so we're going to be referencing this cell a lot. So let's give it a name here. I'm going to call it mode select. I can see in the top left hand corner the cell now has a name. I can then reference the cell. And we're not going to change sheets, so I'm just going to say mode select dot value for completeness. That's the default property, so not absolutely necessary. Equals a single. Then I want this to happen. Remember, this was the piece of code to just get us that single lyric appearing. Else, then we're in multi-mode. I'm going to put a quick annotation here to remind me. Then we want something else to happen. I'm going to close the conditional statement now so that I don't forget to do it later, which might cause problems. So we've got a conditional statement. Now, if we're in single mode, then exactly the same thing should happen. And it's a good time to check that now. We're in multi-mode, so nothing's happening. Check it back into single mode. We can see, yeah, exactly the same thing is happening. So that's good news for us. So in multi-mode, we want to do something a little bit more complex. Now we actually want to concatenate lots of lines of text here. For example, if it's day 4, then we want to bring together these 4 lines into a single message box. That's your challenge. Stop the video. Just see if you can get started with it. Even if you can't finish it, what concepts, what techniques might be helpful. See if you can get started with this. Well, we're going to be bringing these lines of code together. We want Excel to look at each line of code, which is a repeated action. So a loop is going to help us here. Let's have our generic loop name, the tiger favorite, and it's going to be an integer loop because it's going to be counting rows down, an integer variable rather. We're going to have our loop in here. We're going to say for counter equals 1, 2, and then how far do we want counter to go? Well, we want it to go down to the value of the day. We already have a variable that stores that really useful information, which is the day number variable just here. So we can say for counter equals 1 to day number. Just open the loop, so I'm going to make sure I close it straight away. Next with a T. Here we are. Next counter, and then what do we want to happen? Well, we'd like lyric store, which is the variable we're using to store this information. Lyric store equals the existing value of lyric store, and concatenate the text together. Now we want a new line. Remember that message box? In fact, let's not do the new line yet. Let's do, I'm just going to recycle some code here. Let's just see if we can get all the text appearing in a single line. So it wouldn't be particularly useful, but again, it's that intermediary step. It's quite difficult what we're trying to do. Let's simplify it, do something simpler. Once we've done that, we'll be able to, launch into the main task. So what are we expecting to happen here? Well, we're going to concatenate these values into this variable, and then we're going to display this variable at the bottom here, the last line here. So let's switch into multi-mode. There we go, and then day 5. Okay, so this is exactly what I expected. So we've actually got 5 lines of lyrics there concatenated together without spaces. So it's not particularly useful for us at the moment, but as I said, it was a simplification. We managed to get it done, so now we've got confidence. We know we're on the right track technically as well. So let's keep going here, just so you can see the code. And I'm just going to close this. There we go. Right, so we're not quite there yet. We want to put new lines into this text string. We want to put new lines in to get those lyrics lining up line by line. How do we do that? Well, if we say, put an underscore in here, and then we're going to say and, the and sign, VB new line, and then another underscore here, something like this. That's going to insert the new lines into this text string, which should get us the kind of, should get us the kind of display that we're looking for. Let's try it. Okay, interesting. Not quite there yet. Let's have a look at what's going on. Counter equals 1 to day number, next counter. Set day number. Okay, yeah, you can see I've used the wrong variable here. So this should be counter. Okay, because here we're looking to work through these cells, these rows, one row at a time. Get the information from this row, go down a row, get the information from this row, go down a row. The mechanism that facilitates that is this variable working with offset, because every time we go through this loop, you can see counter is the variable that controls the loop. Every time we go through this loop, the value of counter is increasing by 1. That's why the loop didn't work when I had the day number variable in here, because the day number variable is not increasing in value. That's just defining the exit condition for the loop. That's not changing in value. The counter variable does change in value. That has the effect of moving through the data and achieving this concatenation. Okay, what have we got now? This is looking a lot better. And let's just go to 25. So we've got all of the lyrics of the song here concatenated, and this seems to be working well. What about this, the title the text appearing in the title here. It's not quite right for the second mode. So let's deal with that now. How do we get the right text appearing down here? Let's have title text as string. Okay, and then it's going to cut this away, Control X. And then here we can say title text, the name of the variable, equals, and bring in what I just cut out of the message box line of code there. And then let's pop this in the conditional statement. And pop this in here. I'm now going to change this. And we want to say something like, lyrics for day 1 to today, there we go, and ampersand, and then the variable, of course, the day number variable that's going to store the information. Remember, right at the beginning we set this variable to the value of the day that it is, the value of the day whose shape has been clicked. And then we can just pop the name of the variable that we created down here in the message box, and then let's see where we get to. So we're still in multi-mode. I'm going to test the 2 modes now. So day 5, lyrics for day 1 to day 5, that's perfect. So if I knock this over, switch this over to single mode, then what do we get? We get our single lyric, and then we get, day 5 lyrics. So this is an informative message. Let's try that once more. Multi and day 5. Don't you say it's the final kiss was the last lyric there. Day 5, don't you say it's the final kiss. Okay, I'm happy with how that's working at the moment. So we're working through these functions. We've got our single line functionality. We've got our multiple line functionality. One more thing to do here, which is I'd like to have a validation solve, because everybody knows you shouldn't open the advent calendar too early. So I shouldn't be opening number 9 on the 8th of December, for example. We can build that in with a validation control. And I want this same setup duplicated. So I'm going to say Control C to copy, Control Alt V and T for the formats. The validation here, Alt A V V on the PC. The validation this time, we're just going to go for the yes no list that we previously created. And then here we're going to say validation. Let's just say a validate question mark. Okay, Alt H O W, change the column widths. Let's try 12 here. Seems to work well. And then we've got yes, no for validate. So again, let's take a step back, try to think conceptually about what we're trying to do here. So we need to compare 2 things. We need to compare the day number, and remember that the day number, we've already extracted that piece of information, so maybe we could use the same mechanism there. Compare the day number to today's date, and remember Excel knows today's date. We can extract that information. We need to compare those 2 pieces of information. If today's date is equal to or more than the shape day, then we want to we don't want to allow the user to view the lyric. Okay, so how do we get started with this? So as I said, this piece of code here is doing a good job for us. I'm just wondering whether we could just duplicate that code. In fact, for simplicity, I'm just going to duplicate this code. Is that a good idea? No, it's not. I don't think that's a good idea. Okay, so the most efficient approach, let's create a new routine first, and let's call it validate day. Okay, so this information here, I'm just going to move up to this routine. Now this does present a challenge for us, because this day number variable is critical in the routine below. We know that, and we understand what it does. So we need to retain it there. So this variable declaration, I'm going to move it to the top of the module so that day number becomes day number becomes a module level variable. Now, a routine level variable, like these variables here, they're within a subroutine. They will clear once this subroutine is finished. Excel won't remember their values once this subroutine is finished. Variables declared at the top of the module are module level variables. Even when the subroutine finishes, Excel will retain the value of those variables. So this is interesting for us because it means we can pass a value effectively from one routine to another. We're going to see in a second how we do that. So the end of this validation routine, well, call. Is this still going to work? I think it's still going to work. We're going to have to see. I'm a bit worried about this application caller now, but it should be okay. Yeah, right. So let's stop here and let's test if this is going to work. So I'm just worried this is going to get a little bit too complicated, but let's give it a go. So we want Excel to go to this validate day routine first, and how are we going to do that? Well, we could go through the shapes and reassign the macros. I'm going to change the name here, selection.onAction. Let's change this to validate day. And then let's recreate these shapes. So click create 25 shapes. I'm going to save the file here in case it all goes wrong. Recreate the shapes. Okay, the shapes have been recreated. Now if I right click on the shape, go to assign macro, I can see that validate day has been assigned. So you've just seen the power of that macro we created at the beginning. Very easy to create new shapes, and in this case we wanted to change one of the shape's properties. In this case, the macro assigned to the shape. So we're validating the day here. Now if everything's working well, we've got a module level variable here. Now everything should still work as it was before, because Excel is going to go through this routine and then it's going to go to the click on shape routine. Everything should work as it was working before. Day 5 lyric, that's fine. Let's try multi-mode quickly. Multi-mode quickly, yeah. And this all seems to be working well. So that module level variable mechanism seems to be working fine. Excel's going from, it's running this routine first and then going into this routine. Now I was a bit worried that this application.caller line of code might be problematic in some way. In fact, turned out to work fine. Okay. So now we want to, there's some piece of information we need. We have day number. So we've got the day number from the shape. What else do we need? Remember, we've got to compare two things to do this. Well, we need actual day number. I'm going to declare a variable here, dim actual day number as integer. Now we've got to think about how to get this information from Excel. I'm hoping, not absolutely sure, I'm hoping it's easy as saying day now and then with brackets like this. Okay, so I'm just going to put a breakpoint in there, just clicked in the margin to put the breakpoint in. That's because I want to stop the routine there and check the value of this actual day number variable. So I'm going to click on the routine here, actual day number, okay, seems to have worked, equals 7. That's because, and just to prove this, actual day number equals 7. You can see that there, just hovering the cursor over the variable. If I go to whole desktop, you can see in the bottom right hand corner, it is the 7th of December. It's going to be quite small on your screen, but it is the 7th of December. Okay, so that seems to be working well. So what do we need to do? Well, we need to compare these two pieces of information. Now, if the actual day is more than the day number, yeah, so that would mean, for example, if it's the 11th and the shape that was clicked was the 12th, let me just get this logic clear in my mind. If actual day number, yes, is more than the day number, then we don't want it to work. Okay, so let's say less than or equal to. Okay, then we want it to work as usual. If not, then we're just going to say, kind of a message box here saying it is too early and and usual message box text here, and Advent calendar. Okay, there we go. And then at this point, we do want to exit the sub, although I think that pretty much would have happened anyway. Okay, good. So what are we expecting to happen? Well, I only want this to happen, of course, if we are in the validate mode as well. As something else we can program in now. So, and this is, let's say that was mode select. So let's call this valley select, valley for validation. Okay, valley select, there it is. Just checking the spelling there. Okay, valley select. So if okay, yeah. Yeah, I only want Excel to do this if we are in validation mode. So range of valley select equals yes, then we want to do all that. If not, if the value in this validation cell is no, then we don't want the mechanism to run. If that's the case, then very simply we just want to say call click on shape. We just want to go straight to the click on shape routine. Now I do think I could have programmed that with fewer lines of code, but just for simplicity I'm using the simplest possible structure at the moment. Let's just look through this code. It's too early, exit sub. Okay, good. Okay, let's see if this works now. So let's stick the validation mechanism on. Now it's currently the 7th of December. So if I click on day 9, it did work. Okay, so that shouldn't have worked because we put the validation mechanism on. Okay, so let's step through the code. Let's see what's happening. Okay, I'm just going to put a breakpoint in here before we get there. Okay, so the actual day number is 0. Execute this line of code. Actual day number is 7. So if actual day number is less than or equal to, so the actual day number is the 7th and less than or equal to 5. Okay, I think I might just have these the wrong way around. Okay, so what happens if I go too early then? What happens if I go too early? Play, yeah. Okay, so I've just got these the wrong way around, which I seem to do quite often. So we could switch these around quickly just by changing this from less than or equal to more than. That should switch around the logic of this routine. So let's see what happens now. If I go to day 15, stepping through the code, then yeah, this is too early. If we're going for day 15, if I go for day 5, stepping through the code, go for day 5, play, yeah, and then it's working fine for day 5. So I'm just going to take this breakpoint out, do some more testing. So what we're expecting is that it's going to work up till day 7, because it's currently the 7th of December, so day 2 working fine. Day 7, oh, it's too early. Well, it would be a bit harsh to say to people you can't open it on the 7th. What about day 8? Day 8 is definitely too early. Okay, can we just quickly adjust the logic of this routine? If we say equals to or more than, you can see it should be more than or equals to. You can see Excel just switch around the notation there. Save the file. So day 7 is now okay, it's the 7th, and obviously day 3 is also okay, and day 8, it's too early for day 8. Okay, so that just about completes our Excel Advent calendar. Final thing, let's just put a nice header at the top here. A nice way to do this kind of header, I find, is to actually put a shape in. Obviously you could drop something in cells here, but rather than playing with, you know, row heights and column widths, let's just say Excel Advent calendar here. Okay, Alt-HAC will put central justification. Then some nice quick formatting options we can access up here. And let's just go for, should we go for something dark green with a bit of shading, something like this. Okay, there we go. You can make yours look a lot better, obviously. Let's just increase the size of the text here. That's a little bit better. Okay, but anyway, you can work on that yourself. Get the appearance looking exactly how you want it to. Good, so that's our Excel-based Advent calendar. So let's just go through the functionality quickly. So we can click on any day here, and we can get the lyric flashing up. Remember, you can change these lyrics to your favorite song just on the lyric store sheet. If you change these lyrics, then we're going to have different lyrics flashing up. Flash up multiple days, of course. Yeah, and I can control here whether we go for multiple days or single days. So we're in single day mode now. Let's flick it back over to multiple mode. Then we've got this validation control. If this is set to no, then wherever I click, haven't tested this yet actually, but wherever I click, I can see the lyrics come up now. Nice informative title to the message box here. If I set this to yes, then I have to wait until that day. It's currently the 7th, so day 8, I'm getting a message saying it's too early. Okay, very good. So that's the Excel-based Advent calendar. I really think with code and with learning generally, it's important to try to do fun stuff from time to time when you're away from the pressure of the work environment or meeting deadlines or a particular brief. You can be more creative, less pressure. That tends to maximize learning. So I think stuff like this, it seems like a bit irreverent and pointless, but actually you can really learn a lot because you're in a good mindset, in the right kind of learning environment. So that's the Excel Advent calendar. I hope it was fun for you, and I hope you learn a load in the process. Wish you a Merry Christmas from Tiger from Nottingham in the UK, whether you're celebrating or not. And I hope next year you'll continue your Excel learning, whatever level you're at, whether you're a beginner just getting into VBA, whether you're an experienced programmer. I'd love to have you on the channel watching the videos, hopefully leaving comments and likes and stuff. That'll be great. Okay, I'm Chris from Tiger Spreadsheet Solutions. Wish you all, as I said, Merry Christmas, and I'll see you very soon in another video on the channel. Take care.